Okay. So, Kyle, how has Evo been dealing with the coronavirus? Tell us a little about that.
Well, it actually has been quite challenging. Unlike a single family home, we have a lot more vectors here, or in terms of multiple carriers or possible carriers. So it's been quite a bit more challenging in terms of social distancing and managing one's household perimeter. Um, and with that, we've had multiple meetings, and I think we've done a pretty wonderful job of making agreements, and people have stayed in integrity for the most part, as far as not just hand washing, but social distancing and what that means inside a community, because we're so used to being very close to each other and communing for different meals and a lot of shared community space. So I think for the first week was very intense, especially since we have several high risk members in our community, including some folks that are a bit older, as well as a few immunocompromised folks. So for me, somebody that understood very quickly what this thing was, to a certain extent, of how real it was and how potentially dangerous and how quickly people can get into life-threatening pneumonia, it was a bit stressful, and especially since at first the majority of us are highly, we're healthy, we're youthful, you know, supposedly it wasn't supposed to affect us, but I think very quickly we realized that we were the carriers that then could affect not only the high risk people, but also the grandmothers and grandfathers and extended families. So we had to pretty much shut down our borders here at Evo, which was, I would say, one of the more difficult things we've ever had to do.
Yeah. So Evo's been utilizing your medicine man skills here, um, even more so during the coronavirus, and
Mm-hmm.
wondering if you have any tips or advice for folks on an individual or maybe nuclear family level, what they can do, some practices, maybe some supplements or herbs or things, and just maybe one or two things that you've found or been really good that you've been recommending to folks.
Well, one thing as far as Western medicine for sure is increase your levels of zinc, vitamin C, and vitamin D. Thankfully, here in Southern California, we get some sun, but 500, at least 500 milligrams of vitamin C a day. Um, there's a variety of different ways you can take that in. I recommend a powder or food-based vitamins are really good. And then zinc, not only ingestible, but also throat lozenges as well as throat spray. You want to create an ecology of the body that is less conducive for the virus to want to take hold, and it really takes hold in the throat. So that's basic Western stuff. On the more Eastern side, there's something called jade windscreen, which is a useful prophylactic herb you can take. And then, if one does have symptoms, something called Shao Chai Hu Tong, which I was able to distribute to everybody. And we had a few moments where we had some early stage fevers that, it was super effective in kicking the fever back out. So, um, those are some things. And then also just keeping the lungs nice and open. The tendency right now, I think, is for us to kind of be sheltered and a feeling that we can't maybe do as much exercise, but just even things where you're opening and closing the chest. And even that, like, you can hear, like, it starts to clear some phlegm. And then dietary wise, you want to decrease foods that are like greasy foods, sugary foods, things that create phlegm. So I would decrease dairy, decrease gluten, decrease heavy greasy foods. And then alcohol wise, I telling people distilled alcohol is generally a little bit better than fermented alcohols. Um, and probably just moderation in a lot of things right now. So overall, I would say this thing is actually encouraging humans to do the things that they should be doing anyway. But now it's just high alert. So.
So last question is, you talked a little about the Western approach and the Eastern approach, and it seems as though you've combined the two. Um, is this something new for you? Is this something maybe seems new for the world in general? But is this something
Well,
you've been thinking about for a while?
it's a matter of fact. For the last 2 decades, I have had a vision of integrative medicine.
Oh,
Yes. But, like anything, there's a middle road, and combining the best of both worlds, I think, is super useful. Chinese medicine has been dealing with pandemics for thousands of years, so I think we can definitely take a page out of their notebook. There's a warm, febrile school of herbs basically born out of the knowing that around every 5 years there's like a raging virus that has come through China, and now that reality is coming through the whole world. So that's something super useful. And then Western wise, utilizing research dollars to prove, I think, help those Western-minded analytical folks that this stuff is real and it's useful and it isn't just anecdotal. I think we're finally at a time that herbs are very powerful and they affect the ecology of the body. Pharmaceuticals are very effective, but they're super high-powered, and it isn't always required, because oftentimes when you come at stuff with missiles, you're going to have ramifications, side effects, and herbs are much more gentle. And then I would say even farther than that, my teacher, a Korean grandmaster, has been claiming for a while, and I tend to agree, that the future of medicine is moving more and more towards vibrational medicine, that the viruses are going to mutate faster than we have the ability to protect ourselves in terms of medicine, right? It's usually about a year or maybe 8 months. We'll see how quickly a vaccine or some sort of pharmaceutical can, create some safety from these things. And by the time we get the next one, it's like the iPhone. There will already be a new virus that is just faster and smarter than science. So it has more to do with creating an internal environment or an ecology that is less interested or less conducive for a pathogen to want to take hold in that environment. And so things like meditation and qigong and yoga and practices where you've heard this, but raising or shifting your frequency, your vibration, to a place that is less interesting for, we'll call it a lower vibration entity to want to inhabit. So that's, it seems woo-woo, but I think we're finally getting to a place where vibration and understanding that all matter and energy is vibration. I mean, that's just the truth. Physics is physics. That's what it is. And if things don't like the sound of something, they're not going to want to be there. So make our sound, make our vibe something that is sweet, and less interested in well, I'll say I think there's a way to resonate as a species that I think in our hearts we all know is a better way. So let's keep working towards finding that. So cheers, y'all.
cheers. Thanks for your time, Kyle.